My in-laws demanded I hand over my inheritance. Instead, I gave them a lesson they will remember for the rest of their lives. If you believe in karma, if you believe that patience is the sharpest weapon a person can hold, then stay with me until the very end of this video, because what happened in my family will make your jaw drop. Before we start, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because on this channel, we tell real stories of ordinary people who were pushed too far and who found the courage to fight back. My name in this story is Claire. I was 32 years old when my father passed away and left me something that changed my life forever. But this is not a story about money. This is a story about respect, about family, about the moment I realized that blood does not always mean loyalty. Let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in a small town, the only child of a hardworking man named Robert. My mother died when I was 9 years old, and my father raised me alone. He worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. He never remarried. He said his heart already had enough love for one lifetime, and that love was for me. Robert was not a rich man in the traditional sense. He was a carpenter, and later he started his own small furniture business. It took him almost 20 years, but slowly, quietly, he built something solid. By the time I was in my late 20s, his business was worth more than anyone in our family ever imagined. He never bragged about it. He still drove the same old truck, still wore the same flannel shirts, still woke up at 5 in the morning out of habit. Money never changed him. I married a man named Daniel when I was 26. Daniel came from a family that, on the surface, looked warm and welcoming. His mother, Linda, and his father, Gerald, always smiled at family dinners. His younger sister, Vanessa, always complimented my cooking, my clothes, my choices. For the first few years, I actually believed I had married into a loving family. I was wrong. Looking back now, I can see all the small signs I ignored. The comments about how lucky I was that my father had money. The questions about how much his business was worth. The way Linda would ask, so casually, so sweetly, whether Robert had a will yet. At the time, I thought they were just curious. I thought that was normal for family to ask these things. I did not yet understand that some people are patient hunters, and they will wait years for the right moment to strike. My father passed away 3 years into my marriage. It was sudden, a heart attack, no warning at all. I remember the phone call like it happened 5 minutes ago. I remember dropping to my knees in the kitchen, the phone still in my hand, unable to breathe. Daniel held me that night, and for a moment, just one moment, I thought I had a real partner beside me. The funeral was small, quiet, full of people whose lives my father had touched with his kindness. Neighbors he had helped for free, workers he had paid fairly when other business owners cut corners, friends who said he was the most honest man they ever knew. I stood there in my black dress, holding back tears, trying to be strong. And in the back of the room, I noticed Linda and Gerald whispering to each other. I did not think much of it then. I was too broken to notice the wolves circling. 2 weeks after the funeral, the will was read. My father had left everything to me. The house, the business, his savings, all of it. It was not a small amount, it was substantial, the result of decades of sacrifice and hard work. I remember sitting in the lawyer's office, tears streaming down my face. Not because of the money, but because even in death, my father was still taking care of me. I called Daniel that evening to share the news, thinking he would be happy for me, happy that we were now financially secure, happy that we could finally build the life we always talked about. Instead, I heard something in his voice that I did not recognize, a kind of excitement that had nothing to do with love. That night, he invited his parents over for dinner without telling me in advance. I thought maybe it was to comfort me, to support me during a hard time. But what happened next shocked me completely. Linda arrived with a bottle of wine and a smile so wide it looked rehearsed. Gerald shook my hand and said with a straight face, "Claire, we are so sorry for your loss. But now that you have received your father's inheritance, we need to talk about family responsibilities." I remember blinking, confused, thinking I misheard him. "Family responsibilities," he repeated, sitting down at my dining table as if he owned it. Linda chimed in immediately. "Sweetheart, you know Vanessa has been struggling with her business loan. And Gerald's health has not been good. The medical bills are piling up. We are family. Your father would have wanted us to be taken care of too. I sat there in silence, my heart pounding, unable to process what I was hearing. My father had been dead for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, and already they were sitting at my table, discussing how to divide his life's work among themselves. I looked at Daniel, expecting him to defend me, to tell his parents this was inappropriate, that this was too soon, that this was not their money to discuss. Instead, he nodded along with them. "Claire, they have a point," he said. "We are married now. What is yours is technically ours, and family should help family." Imagine how I felt in that moment. The man I had built a life with, the man who was supposed to be my partner, was sitting there agreeing that my father's inheritance, earned through decades of sweat and sacrifice, should be handed over to people who had contributed nothing to it. I excused myself and went to the bathroom, locked the door, and cried silently so they would not hear me. I looked in the mirror and asked myself how I had not seen this coming. When I came back to the table, Gerald had already prepared a number. Yes, an actual number, written on a napkin. He wanted 40% of the total inheritance, split between paying off Vanessa's business debt and covering, in his words, family medical expenses. I asked him calmly, "And what exactly did you contribute to my father's business or his savings?" The room went silent for a moment. Linda's smile faltered, just slightly before she recovered. "Claire, we contributed by welcoming you into our family, by treating you like our own daughter." I wanted to laugh, but I was too devastated to find any humor in the situation. I told them I needed time to think, that grief was still fresh, and that no decisions would be made that night. They left, but not before Vanessa texted me later that evening saying, "I hope you make the right choice. Family always comes first." The right choice, according to her, was to give away everything my father had worked for to people who saw me not as family, but as a wallet with a heartbeat. That night, Daniel and I had our first real fight. I told him how betrayed I felt. I told him this was not about money. It was about respect, about the fact that they saw my father's death as an opportunity rather than a loss. He accused me of being selfish, of not understanding what family sacrifice meant. He said his parents had always been good to me, and that I owed them gratitude. Gratitude. For what, exactly? For smiling at dinners while secretly waiting for my father to die so they could ask for his money. I did not sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction I had ever had with Daniel's family, seeing them now with completely different eyes. Every compliment felt like a calculation. Every kind word felt like an investment they expected to collect on eventually. Over the next few weeks, the pressure only intensified. Linda would call me almost daily, always starting with concern about my grief, and always ending with a subtle reminder about family responsibility. Gerald sent me articles about how inheritance should be shared among family members, as if trying to build a legal case out of guilt and misinformation. Vanessa stopped by unannounced twice, each time bringing up her failing business, each time hinting that a loan from me could save everything. I felt suffocated in my own home. The house my father had left me no longer felt like a place of comfort. It felt like a battlefield. Daniel, instead of standing beside me, stood beside his family every single time. He would say things like, "Claire, you're being too emotional about this. It's just money. We have plenty." We. As if it belonged to him too, simply because we shared a last name. I began to notice other things as well. Small withdrawals from our joint account that I had not approved. A new car that suddenly appeared in Vanessa's driveway, one that looked suspiciously expensive for someone claiming financial hardship. Whispers between Daniel and his mother that stopped the moment I walked into the room. I started to feel like a stranger in my own marriage, like an outsider looking in on a family that had already decided how to spend money that was never theirs to begin with. This was the turning point. This was the moment I stopped being the grieving, passive widow they expected me to be and started paying very, very close attention. I want you to imagine for a moment what it feels like to realize the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally actually see you as an asset to be managed. That realization does something to a person. It either breaks you, or it makes you sharper than you have ever been in your life. For me, it was the second one. I decided I was not going to scream. I was not going to cry in front of them anymore. I was not going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. Instead, I decided to watch. to listen, and to plan. The first thing I did was quietly consult a lawyer, a woman named Patricia who specialized in family estate law and marital assets. I told her everything: the inheritance, the demands, the pressure from my in-laws, and the strange behavior I had started noticing in my own marriage. Patricia listened carefully, then asked me one important question. "Claire, is your inheritance separate from your marital assets, or has it been combined with joint accounts?" That question hit me hard, because I realized I had made a critical mistake. In the emotional chaos after my father's death, I had allowed some of the inheritance to be deposited into our joint account, simply because it was convenient at the time. Patricia explained that this could complicate things legally, that commingled funds sometimes lose their status as separate property, depending on the laws in our state. This was my wake-up call. I understood that if I did not act carefully and quickly, I could actually lose control over what my father had worked his entire life to build. Over the next few days, I moved with quiet precision. I opened a new individual account, one that only I had access to. I began transferring what remained of the inheritance into that account, separating it completely from anything Daniel or his family could touch. I kept detailed records of every transaction, every conversation, every text message from Linda, Gerald, and Vanessa demanding money. I even started recording certain conversations, always within the legal boundaries of my state, just to have proof of what was really happening behind those friendly family dinners. While I was doing this quietly, I continued to act calm on the surface. I told Daniel I needed more time to think about the family's request. I told Linda I was still grieving and could not make big decisions yet. I smiled at Vanessa when she visited, even though every smile felt like acid in my throat. Meanwhile, I was building a case, gathering evidence, and preparing for what was coming. Because during this time, I discovered something that changed everything. While reviewing the joint account statements with Patricia, we noticed unusual transfers, money moving out in amounts just small enough to avoid immediate suspicion, but frequent enough to add up significantly over just a few months. When I traced them, my stomach turned. The money had gone to Vanessa's business account and to a separate account under Gerald's name. Daniel had been secretly funneling money to his family without ever discussing it with me, using funds that were supposed to be shared between us as husband and wife. Imagine how I felt discovering that the man I trusted, the man who told me I was being selfish for protecting my father's legacy, had been quietly stealing from our own shared finances to give to the very people pressuring me. This was not misunderstanding. This was betrayal, calculated and deliberate. I confronted Daniel that night, calmly, without yelling, just laying the bank statements on the table in front of him. His face went pale. He tried to explain it away, saying it was a loan, that he was going to tell me eventually, that his family needed help, and he did not want to bother me with details during my grief. I asked him one simple question. "Daniel, if this was really just a loan, why did you hide it from me? Why did every single transfer happen while I was distracted with funeral arrangements and paperwork?" He had no real answer, just excuses wrapped in more excuses. That night, something inside me shifted completely. I stopped seeing Daniel as my husband and partner, and started seeing him as an obstacle standing between me and protecting what my father had built. I did not confront his family yet. I did not scream. I did not cry in front of them. I did not give them any indication that I knew what was happening. Instead, I went back to Patricia with everything I had found, and together we built a plan. A plan that would not just protect my inheritance, but would expose exactly who these people really were in front of everyone who mattered to them. This is where the story gets interesting, because what I did next was not about revenge in the way people usually imagine it. It was not about screaming matches or public humiliation for the sake of drama. It was about something far more powerful, something that would make them face the consequences of their own greed, using the very same systems and expectations they had tried to use against me. The first step was securing everything legally. Patricia helped me draft documents that clearly separated my inheritance from any shared marital assets, protecting every dollar my father had worked his entire life to earn. We also filed a formal request to trace and document the unauthorized transfers Daniel had made to his family, building a clear paper trail of financial misconduct within our marriage. While this was happening quietly behind the scenes, I continued attending family dinners, continued smiling politely, continued pretending I had not yet made a decision about the inheritance. Linda and Gerald grew impatient. They started applying more pressure, showing up at my house more frequently, calling more often, even involving other extended family members to guilt me into compliance. One evening, Gerald actually said to me directly, "Claire, your father is gone now. This family is all you have left. Do not make us regret welcoming you into it." A threat disguised as concern. I simply nodded and said I needed a little more time. Behind that calm exterior, I was preparing something they never saw coming. The second step of my plan involved something Patricia suggested that completely changed the direction of everything. She recommended I organize a formal family meeting, something official, something that would feel important to them, framed as the moment I would finally announce my decision about the inheritance. I agreed immediately, because I understood exactly what this meant. This was going to be the moment I exposed everything, in front of everyone, with documented proof they could not argue against. I planned this family meeting carefully, choosing a date about 3 weeks later, giving myself enough time to gather every single piece of evidence I needed. During those 3 weeks, I compiled everything Patricia and I had found. Bank statements showing the unauthorized transfers Daniel made to his family, text messages from Linda and Gerald explicitly demanding portions of my inheritance, messages from Vanessa admitting her business had already failed months before she began asking me for money, meaning her claims of saving the business were completely fraudulent. I even discovered, through Patricia's investigation, that Gerald's supposed serious medical condition, the one he used to guilt me emotionally, was actually a minor issue that had already been resolved months earlier, fully covered by his insurance. Every single justification they had used to demand my father's inheritance was built on lies. Imagine spending decades building a life through honest work, only to have people fabricate emergencies and manipulate grief just to take what was never theirs. I decided these lies deserved to be exposed publicly, in the same room where they had tried to manipulate me. I invited the entire family to the meeting, Linda, Gerald, Vanessa, and Daniel, telling them I had made my final decision regarding the inheritance and wanted to discuss it as a family. I also invited someone they did not expect. Patricia, my lawyer, presented as a family friend, helping me organize my late father's estate, though in reality, she was there to ensure everything happened smoothly, legally, and with proper documentation. The day of the meeting arrived. I remember standing in my kitchen that morning, looking at myself in the mirror, feeling a strange mixture of nervousness and strength. This was not just about protecting money anymore. This was about protecting my father's memory, protecting my own dignity, and finally standing up against people who had spent months trying to manipulate my grief for their own benefit. They arrived exactly on time, dressed nicely, smiling as usual, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Linda hugged me at the door, saying how proud she was that I was finally being reasonable about family responsibilities. Gerald patted Daniel on the back, whispering something about finally getting things sorted out. Vanessa sat down at the table, already discussing what she planned to do with the money she assumed she would receive. I let them talk. I let them get comfortable. I let them believe for just a few more minutes that they had won. Then I began. I stood up at the head of the table, my father's old wooden chair, the one he used to sit in during family dinners when he was alive, and I looked at each of them individually. "Before I share my decision," I said calmly, "I want to talk about everything that has happened over the past few months. I think it is important we are all honest with each other, as families should be." Linda smiled, nodding, completely unaware of what was coming. I continued. "Gerald, you told me your medical bills were overwhelming, that you needed financial help urgently." He nodded confidently. I placed a folder on the table, sliding it toward him. "These are your medical records, showing your condition was resolved months ago, fully covered by insurance. There were no outstanding medical bills." The room went silent. Gerald's face turned red, his mouth opening to respond, but no words came out. I turned to Vanessa. "You told me you needed money to save your business from failing." She nodded nervously. I slid another folder toward her. "These are your business records, showing your company officially closed 4 months before you first asked me for financial help. There was no business left to save." Vanessa's face went pale, her eyes darting toward her mother, searching for support that suddenly was not there. Finally, I turned to Daniel, my husband, the man who was supposed to protect me, support me, and stand beside me through everything. "And you," I said, my voice steady despite the pain in my chest, "secretly transferred money from our joint account to your family, without my knowledge or consent, while telling me I was being selfish for wanting to protect my father's inheritance." I placed the bank statements on the table, each transfer highlighted, dates matching exactly with moments when I was distracted with grief and funeral arrangements. Daniel stared at the papers, his hands trembling, unable to look me in the eyes. Imagine the silence in that room. A silence so heavy it felt like the air itself had frozen. Linda tried to speak first, her voice shaking. "Claire, we can explain everything. This is not what it looks like." I raised my hand gently, stopping her. "I am not finished," I said calmly. I introduced Patricia properly this time, explaining she was not simply a family friend, but my lawyer, who had been helping me document everything over the past few weeks. Patricia then explained, in clear and professional terms, that all of the inheritance had already been legally secured in an individual account, completely separate from any marital assets, protected entirely under my name. She also explained that the unauthorized transfers Daniel made from our joint account were documented and could be pursued legally if I chose to do so. Gerald tried one last manipulation, his voice desperate. "Claire, we are family. Please. We made mistakes, but we love you." I looked at him, and for the first time in months, I felt completely calm, completely in control. "Family," I said slowly, "does not calculate value based on inheritance. Family does not fabricate medical emergencies or fake business failures to manipulate someone during their darkest grief. What you did was not love, it was exploitation." Then I delivered the moment I had been planning for weeks, the epic revenge that would make them remember this day for the rest of their lives. I explained that I had already used part of the inheritance before this meeting to make a decision none of them expected. Instead of giving any money directly to family members who had proven themselves dishonest and manipulative, I had used a portion of my father's inheritance to establish a small trust fund in his name, dedicated to helping local tradespeople and small business owners who needed honest, legitimate support. The exact kind of people my father had spent his life working alongside and helping quietly, without any recognition. I told them that this trust fund had already been legally established that same week, publicly announced in the local newspaper under my father's name, celebrating his legacy of hard work and honesty. I explained that this was the actual family my father cared about, the honest workers, the struggling but genuine small business owners, not people who fabricated lies for personal gain. Then came the part that truly shocked them. I informed Daniel, calmly and clearly, that given the discovery of unauthorized financial transfers from our joint account and the pattern of manipulation and dishonesty I had experienced over the past several months, I had already filed for divorce that morning, with Patricia representing me. The room fell into complete shock. Linda gasped, Vanessa covered her mouth, and Gerald simply stared blankly at the table, unable to process what was happening. Daniel finally spoke, his voice breaking. "Claire, please, we can fix this. I love you. Please don't do this." I looked at him, and for a brief moment, I felt something close to sadness, mourning the marriage I thought we had. But then I remembered every manipulative dinner, every guilt trip, every secret transfer, every time he chose his family's greed over our partnership. "You had every opportunity to stand beside me," I said quietly. "Instead, you chose to stand beside people who saw my father's death as a business opportunity." I explained that the divorce process would be straightforward, since my inheritance was now fully protected, and since Patricia had already documented every unauthorized transfer, giving me full legal standing to reclaim what had been secretly taken from our joint account. Imagine how it felt for them, sitting there, realizing that every manipulative plan they had carefully built over the past several months had just completely collapsed in a single afternoon. They had underestimated me. They assumed grief made me weak. That emotional vulnerability meant I would eventually give in to their demands simply to keep peace within the family. Instead, grief had made me sharper, more observant, more determined to protect everything my father had sacrificed his entire life to build. As the meeting ended, Linda tried one final desperate attempt at emotional manipulation, tears streaming down her face, begging me to reconsider, insisting that family should forgive and move forward together. I simply stood up, walked to the door, and opened it calmly. "You are welcome to leave now," I said. "This meeting is over." One by one, they left in silence. The confidence and entitlement they walked in with completely shattered, replaced by shame and disbelief. Daniel lingered for a moment, looking at me with an expression somewhere between regret and desperation. "Is there really nothing I can do?" he asked quietly. I looked at him one final time. "You already made your choice, months ago. Every single time you chose your family's greed over honesty with me. This is simply the consequence of that choice." He left without another word. After they were all gone, I sat alone at that table, the same table where they had tried to manipulate me weeks earlier, and I felt something I had not felt in months. Peace. Real, genuine peace. Over the following months, the divorce proceeded smoothly, thanks to Patricia's meticulous documentation. I successfully reclaimed the money Daniel had secretly transferred to his family, and my father's inheritance remained fully protected under my name alone. Daniel's family, once so confident and demanding, found themselves publicly embarrassed within their small community once word quietly spread about their attempted manipulation, especially after the local newspaper published a heartfelt article about my father's legacy and the honest trust fund established in his name. Ironically, the very story they hoped would give them access to wealth ended up highlighting exactly the kind of integrity they lacked, while celebrating the honest, hard-working man my father truly was. Vanessa's failed business became public knowledge, damaging her reputation within our small business community. Since word spreads quickly when people discover someone attempted financial fraud against family during a time of grief, Gerald and Linda, once respected within our social circles for their friendly demeanor, found themselves quietly excluded from many gatherings, as people who witnessed or heard about their manipulation tactics distanced themselves naturally. As for me, I used the remaining inheritance wisely, investing in my father's original furniture business, expanding it slowly, honoring his legacy through honest growth rather than reckless spending. The trust fund I established in his name became a genuine source of pride within our community, helping numerous honest tradespeople and small business owners over the following years, exactly the kind of people my father always believed deserved support and recognition. Looking back now, years later, I understand that grief, while incredibly painful, also has the power to reveal true character, both in ourselves and in the people around us. My father's death exposed the true nature of people I once considered family, people who saw loss as opportunity rather than tragedy. But it also revealed a strength within myself I never knew existed, a strength built through patience, careful planning, and quiet determination rather than emotional outbursts or public confrontation. The most satisfying revenge, I learned, is not the one filled with screaming matches or dramatic public humiliation. It is the one built on truth, patience, and quiet strength, the kind of revenge that does not just punish those who wronged you, but permanently exposes exactly who they really are in front of everyone who matters. If there is one lesson I want you to take from my story, it is this. Grief makes people vulnerable, and there will always be those willing to exploit that vulnerability for their own benefit. But vulnerability does not mean weakness. Sometimes, the quietest, most patient person in the room is the one carefully building the exact evidence needed to expose everyone's true intentions. My father spent his entire life building something honest, something real, through decades of quiet, consistent hard work. I made sure his legacy remained protected, not through anger or bitterness, but through patience, intelligence, and quiet strength. And in the end, that is exactly what gave me the most satisfying justice of all. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to Payback Fire for more real stories of quiet strength and satisfying justice, and leave a comment sharing your own revenge story. Sometimes the best revenge is not loud or dramatic. Sometimes it is simply the truth, revealed at exactly the right moment. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next story.